The Live told, the story of the pious prince who chose God over his throne was a weapon. It was a narrative designed to turn an act of supreme rebellion into an act of submission. It reinforces the idea that true power is divinely ordained, that the system is absolute, and that to challenge it is to challenge God himself. This is the ultimate tool of control, used by powerful institutions throughout history, and it's still being used right now. They create stories that tell you your individual action is meaningless. Before you, on a raised dais, stands the prince. He is no longer the warrior who led you, the firebrand whose words could make an army rise from farmers. Today, he is a specter, draped in simple gray cloth, his face pale and artistically gaunt. He looks beatific. He looks broken. He chooses the first quill offered to him, a plain feather from a common goose. The crowd holds its breath, a single, unified lung. You can hear the soft, wet sound of a man weeping somewhere behind you. The prince's public abdication is a masterpiece of political theater. 99% of people believe power is a fortress, taken with a sword and held by stone walls. They're wrong. The secret that intelligence agencies, from medieval spymasters to modern black sites, have always known is that true power is a web. And you don't attack the spider. You find the single silken thread that, when plucked, will make him destroy the web himself. The defeat tastes like rust and stale wine in your mouth. You are a prince of nothing now, a ghost haunting the chambers of your own life. The first thing they don't want you to know about kings is that piety is the perfect cover for murder. They teach you that the crown is a divine burden, a holy responsibility. The truth, the one buried under 1,000 years of propaganda, is that the crown is a weapon, and some kings wield it like a mafia boss. The room is cold. Stone sweats in the torchlight, and the air is thick with lies. They call it a suicide. The spice crates, the weapons, every charcoal line is a nail in the coffin of this lie. You are so focused, your world shrunk to the parchment and the hoard, that you almost miss it. A sound, not the scuttling of a rat or the drip of water. It comes from above, from the top of the stone stairs you just descended. The soft, deliberate scrape of a leather boot on stone. Your blood turns to ice. Your head snaps up. The perfect square of moonlight at the top of the stairwell is gone, blotted out by a silhouette. They were the keepers of a light the powerful had tried to extinguish, proving the Dark Ages were only dark because the official sources of truth were deliberately switched off. They were the medieval version of the data leakers and digital activists of your own time, using the oldest technology, the human mind, to route information around a firewall of faith and fear. Awe fills your chest. The murdered man wasn't just a victim. He was a soldier in a secret war for the soul of the world. Hours later, the monastery is a tomb, wrapped in a silence so deep you can hear the blood pounding in your ears. You rise, every muscle screaming in protest, the poison a sluggish fire in your veins. You move like a ghost through the cloister, a wraith haunted by his own impending death. The scriptorium door is unlocked, but the real library, the one that matters, is hidden behind a false wall of shelving at the back. The key, cold and heavy, turns in the rusted lock with a soft, gritty scrape that sounds like a scream in the stillness. He traded a crown of gold for a cause of fire, and his secret network became the intellectual bedrock upon which the entire Renaissance was built. He wasn't a prince who gave up. He was a revolutionary who disappeared into victory, becoming a king of forbidden knowledge, ruling an empire of the mind. The most shocking secret isn't that a prince refused to be king, but that in doing so, he became something infinitely more powerful. And here is the final, chilling parallel that will keep you awake tonight. The greatest lie ever sold is that surrender means defeat. What they don't want you to know is that the most dangerous man isn't the one rattling his cage, but the one who walks into it and calmly asks for the key. You are standing in the Great Hall, shoulder to shoulder, with men who smell of damp wool and fear. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax candles and the cold, mineral breath of ancient stone. Light streams through the high arched windows, catching dust motes that dance like tiny, frantic ghosts. They are screaming your name, but as you look past the adoring, weeping faces, you meet the Archbishop's gaze, and in his eyes, you see no fear. You see a cold, triumphant glint of victory. He knows. He knows you didn't find that lost scripture on your own. And the question hangs in the incense-choked air, a new and terrible mystery. Who gave you the words, knowing it would lead not to justice, but to this? You hear the scrape of a boot on the stone stairs behind you. They don't see the evidence of it operating as a ruthless international cartel, using famine as a market force and salvation as a currency. It's a gut-wrenching realization that feels disturbingly modern. This is the same dark blueprint used by shell corporations and fraudulent charities today. Organizations that use a veil of public good to hide a heart of pure, calculated greed. This is how power truly works. It builds a beautiful, holy facade and buries its crimes beneath the floorboards. You pull out the prince's journal, your hands shaking as you begin to sketch, to document. The silks. You hear the soft, rhythmic cadence of a man who has never learned to read, but is reciting the poetry of Ovid from memory, his eyes closed in concentration, passing it to a young girl who will be its next vessel. This was the ultimate act of rebellion. It wasn't about violence or overthrowing a king. It was about preserving the most dangerous thing in the world, an independent thought. This network was a human internet, woven from breath and memory, passing knowledge orally from one mind to the next. In the chaos, as they lift your limp body, your hand snakes out, unseen, and finds the cold iron ring of the cellar key, hidden behind a loose stone you located weeks ago. The weight of it in your palm is the weight of treason. As they carry you to the infirmary, your mind is a steel trap, mapping the route not to your sickbed, but to the scriptorium. They will leave you, believing you too weak to move. They will pray for your soul, and you will use their prayers as cover for your sin. He didn't abandon his people. He became one of them, a ghost in the machine he swore to dismantle. This is the truth the powerful buried for centuries. 99% of historians will tell you that the great works of classical science, philosophy, and art survived because of isolated, pious monks dutifully copying texts in remote scriptoriums. They are wrong. That knowledge was protected, translated, and spread by a secret resistance movement, an underground empire of memory keepers and peasants' guilds, all masterminded by a fugitive prince. Valerius, the nameless, faceless man, became the leader of this invisible kingdom. You see Tom's grandchildren with no one to provide for them. This choice was never about God, or the crown, or the fate of the kingdom. It was never that grand. It was about saving the people you love from a fire. Your hand hovers, trembling, between the two quills. One is dipped in ink, the other in blood. The silence stretches, a weapon in itself, and you finally understand the secret prayer of every ruler who ever lived. Not for strength, but for an enemy you are allowed to simply kill. The confusion in the crowd blossoms, in a heartbeat, into ecstatic fervor. A roar goes up, a wave of sound that physically pushes you back. They are not looking at the bone anymore. They are looking at you. The man who commanded a miracle. The prince who spoke to a saint. You tried to give them the truth, and instead they have made you a saint. It is the most public, most humiliating defeat of your life. The cheers are deafening, but all you can hear is your sister's dying whisper, begging for a miracle that never came. The wind whistles through the open archways, and with it comes a sound. A soft, rhythmic creak, creak, creak. It's the sound of ropes straining against wood. He is here, the guild's leader. He's hanging from the central beam, his body turning slowly in the unforgiving breeze, his bare feet dangling a dozen yards above the stone floor. The dove wasn't a message, it was a lure. And you realize, with a cold sickness rising in your throat, that the symbol for safe was a trap. You are not alone in the tower. Bolts of silk from the far east, shimmering like captured water in the lantern light. Crates stamped with the symbols of Venetian merchants, leaking the intoxicating scents of cinnamon and clove. And in the far corner, a glint of polished steel. Not plowshares, swords. Long swords, crossbows, and stacks of plate armor, all bearing the royal monastery's sanctified crest. This isn't storage. This is a vault, a black market bank, a weapons depot. 99% of people, then and now, think of the medieval church as a purely spiritual authority, a flawed but holy institution. They don't know the truth. The journal reveals a society hidden in plain sight. Scholars, poets, blacksmiths, and peasants. People who looked ordinary, but whose minds held entire volumes. They met in secret, in moonlit forest clearings, and the basements of forgotten chapels. You can almost be there with them, the scent of pine and damp earth mixing with the sacred, forbidden sound of whispered Latin. The rustle of their worn wool tunics sounds like turning pages. The stone floor rushes up to meet you, a shock of glacial cold that rattles through your teeth. It's a familiar feeling. The monks swarm you, a flurry of brown wool and panicked Latin. Their hands are rough, their breaths sour with cheap ale and piety. They smell your sweat, the clammy sign of death's approach, and they see a prince fading. They see exactly what you want them to see. He did not refuse to be a king. He refused to be their king. He looked at the gilded cage of the throne, at the web of corruption spun by the lords and the church, and realized he could not burn the system down from the inside. So he chose to lead from the shadows. He used the very herbal knowledge the church had banned, potions that could mimic the stillness of death, to fake his own demise. The network of spies and sympathizers he had cultivated for years did the rest, spiriting his body away to this empty tomb. You look from the king's impassive face to the archbishop's patient smile, and you see the shattering truth. They don't want to kill you. They want you to choose to disappear. They want the story of the holy sickness to be your final gift to them, the last brick in the wall of their authority. A martyr is dangerous. A saint who walks away is a legend they can control. Your mind screams, "Fight, die on your feet, let them make you a symbol." But you see Alara's face, not defiant and proud, but terrified, smelling the smoke. To show us that our belief is not in bone, but in God, she has turned her holy relic to common bone before our very eyes. She has tested us to see if we would believe. It's genius. It's monstrous. You are watching the birth of a lie so powerful it swallows the truth whole. It's a perfect medieval example of what your descendants will one day call fake news. The moment a population, conditioned by fear and a desperate need to believe, is given a choice between a harsh reality and a beautiful, comforting story, they choose the story. And there, on the main support beam, you see it again, freshly carved. The three-leaved dove, the symbol for safe. A wave of relief washes over you, so profound it almost brings you to your knees. They made it. The leader is here. But the relief curdles as a new smell reaches you, coiling underneath the scent of wood. It is metallic. It is foul. It is the smell of a butcher's shop left open in the sun. You look up from the carving, your eyes following the massive timbers of the scaffolding into the darkness above. They are finding these hidden, multi-level cellars, far larger than any barn would ever need for simple grain storage. They are finding the church's secret ledgers, written not in ink, but in stone and shadow. The staircase opens into a chamber that steals your breath. It's a cavern of impossible wealth. Sacks of grain are piled to the ceiling. Yes, enough to feed the starving province twice over, hoarded while children starve in the streets. But that's not the secret. The real secret is what lies beyond. He was a node in a secret network, a living library walking in a world where books were ash. You feel the phantom heat of the pyres he describes, not for witches, but for paper and parchment. The church, in its quest for absolute control, wasn't just burning heretics, it was burning thought itself. Books of science from the Arab world, Greek philosophy, Roman histories that contradicted the official narrative, all condemned to flame. But what they don't want you to know is that the words didn't always die. You read on, your own breathing shallow. There is only one place to find the cure, and it's the one place 99% of the monks who harbor you are forbidden to enter on pain of excommunication and a slow, agonizing death. So you must die to live. The spasm begins in your gut, a knot of razors twisting beneath your ribs. You time it perfectly, just as the evening vespers reach their droning peak. A gasp, a choking sound that is only half feigned, and you let your legs give way. It's on the wall behind his sarcophagus, a symbol hidden in the shadows, a secret he left for the very few who would ever know to look. Your fingernail makes a soft, scraping sound against the carving, an ASMR whisper from the past. It is the alchemical sign for transformation. And in that single, chilling moment, the entire conspiracy cracks open. Prince Valerius never died in this monastery. The abdication was not an end. It was the final, brilliant move in a rebellion so vast, so silent, it was never recorded as one. You see it now? It's the quiet room, the two quills, and the illusion of a choice that was never yours to make. It's the modern equivalent of the corporation telling the whistleblower, "Go public. We can weather the storm." But your entire team, their mortgages, their children's futures, their reputations, we will burn it all to the ground and salt the earth. Most of history's great abdications Its shocking treaties, its sudden surrenders, weren't born of strategy or cowardice. They were born in rooms like this, from lists like this. But what they don't want you to know, what has been scrubbed from the official histories, is that the most powerful systems don't break when exposed. They adapt. The Archbishop doesn't falter. He doesn't deny. He throws his head back and his voice booms, a sound that seems to shake the very stones of the cathedral. A miracle! The words detonate in the charged air. He turns to the stunned crowd, his arms spread wide, a beatific smile on his face. The prince, in his perfect piety, has tested our faith, and the saint has answered. A small, discreet carving on the back of a pew in the old village chapel. A dove holding an olive branch with 3 leaves instead of the usual 2. A minor deviation, invisible to anyone not initiated. The message was simple. The plan is ready. The rendezvous is safe. Come at moonrise. Now you stand at that rendezvous. A half-finished bell tower, the timber scaffolding, a black spiderweb against a sliver of moon. The smell of fresh-cut oak and pine pitch fills the air, a scent of progress, of hope. A stone staircase spirals down, each step worn smooth by feet that were never meant to be seen. The flickering light from your lantern licks at the descending dark as you go down. The air grows thick, heavy, tasting of stone dust and something else, something rich and foreign. Spices. The steps are slick with a fine, damp silt. This is what modern archaeologists are only now discovering, using ground-penetrating radar on 12th century sites in France, confirming the whispers of heretics that have been silenced for centuries. The murdered monk was not a monk, not really. The journal in your hands proves it, with a single, chilling phrase you've never seen before. Custos memoriae, a memory keeper. 99% of people, now and then, have never heard this term, because the institution it represents was hunted so viciously that even its name was scraped from history. You lean closer to the candle, the flame dancing in your wide eyes, and the dead man's script pulls you under. He wasn't just a healer tending to the sick. Your next move is not abdication. It is not prayer. It is to secretly begin treating yourself, using a forbidden knowledge that will put you in direct opposition to the will of God and the power of the crown. The war for the throne has already begun, and its first battle will be fought in the chemistry of your own blood. The final secret isn't written in ink. It's carved in cold stone on a tomb that has been empty for 800 years. You stand in the silence of the monastic crypt, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and forgotten time. Your fingers trace the last entry in Prince Valerius's journal. The paper so brittle, it threatens to turn to dust. It reads like a failure, a surrender. But what they don't want you to know is that the answer was never in the book. Every link in the chain of knowledge you fought to build, they will be rounded up before sunrise, the Archbishop states, not as a threat, but as a logistical certainty. They will be tried for heresy. They will be purified by fire. We will start with the girl. This is the moment, the secret that changes everything. What they don't want you to know, what 99% of history books will never print, is that this is the true engine of the world. Power isn't the executioner's axe in the public square. This is the kind of detail historians would one day confirm, using carbon dating on a similar fraudulent relic from 2018 to prove how easily these hoaxes were built on the bones of common animals. You hold it aloft for the crowd to see. This, you declare, your voice ringing with the cold fury of justice, is a lie, a sheep's bone filled with oil. Your faith has been built on a fraud. A tremor runs through the crowd, confusion, anger, the beginning of a riot, simmering just below the surface. This is your moment of triumph. The rot exposed. This is the language of stone, a web of communication invisible to the powerful, a silent rebellion etched into the very houses of their authority. It's the 13th century equivalent of hiding a revolution in the comments section of a state-run media page, using coded emojis and inside jokes to fly under the radar of an algorithm designed to crush dissent. The system is genius. It is beautiful. And tonight, you learn it has been compromised. Hours ago, you found the signal meant for you. The wood groans in protest. A high, splintering shriek cuts through the silence. You can feel the sharp bite of splinters digging into the soft flesh of your palm, a small, hot pain in the vast, cold dark. You grit your teeth, putting your whole weight into it, your muscles screaming. With a final crack, the board gives way. Then another. Beneath them is not a root cellar. It is a maw, a perfect square of profound blackness. Exhaling a chill that has nothing to do with the night air. But you know better. You see the faint bruising on his neck, hidden beneath his collar. You see the chilling precision of the scene. This was no act of God. This was a murder. And it was a message written in a language of terror, addressed directly to you. They know you were here. They know you were healed. And now, the very silence the monk used to calm your soul is the same silence they will use to hunt you down. They have forgotten the locked chest in the old library, filled with forbidden knowledge, on alchemical remedies, on the body's hidden pathways, on antidotes the church would call witchcraft. They thought they were driving you towards God, but instead, they have driven you into the arms of a science that would see you burned at the stake. You close the journal, the ink still wet. The whispers in the shadows have not ceased, but for the first time, you are not listening to them. You are listening to the quiet, cold resolve hardening in your own heart. This grand, holy lie wasn't meant to fool God. It was meant to fool his enemies. His abdication wasn't a surrender. It was the greatest escape act in medieval history. The empty tomb proves he disappeared. But this secret symbol, this final forbidden clue, tells us something more. It tells us he intended to begin again. The pious prince did die, so a new man could be born from his ashes. But where did he go? The sound it makes as it unrolls is the only other noise in the room, a dry, whispery crackle, like autumn leaves skittering across a tombstone. It is a list of names, written in a precise, damning script. You don't need to read them all. You see hers first, Ilara, then the others. Old Tom, the master mason, who taught you how a keystone holds the weight of heaven. Anya, the weaver, whose daughter you held just last spring. Brother Michael, the memory keeper, his name already circled in red. Every single person who trusted you. You run a thumb over its polished surface, and there it is, the secret that changed everything. A tiny hole, no bigger than a pinprick, drilled with a craftsman's auger and plugged with discolored wax. With a fingernail, you scrape away the plug. The scent hits you, not of divine mystery, but of a common kitchen, rancid olive oil. It's a sheep bone, a cheap fraud to fleece the desperate. You can almost feel the smug satisfaction of the long-dead artisan who carved it. You move deeper into the cold, silent heart of the structure, your worn leather boots echoing in the crushing emptiness. You pass a gargoyle, its grotesque face a mask of stone agony. But you don't see the monster, you see the message. Its head is craned unnaturally, facing due north instead of the traditional east. The signal is as clear as a scream in the night. An inquisitor is near. He is traveling south along the King's Road. The warning gives the local guild leader 2 days to hide his family, to burn his heretical texts, to vanish like smoke. The Memory Keeper's map, a scrap of vellum clutched in your sweating hand, is a spiderweb of lines leading to this exact spot. You press your ear to the rough-hewn floorboards, the wood cold against your cheek, and you knock. Thump, thump, solid, and then thump. A dead, empty echo from below. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic bird beating its wings against a cage. This is it. The proof the prince needs. The truth that could shatter a kingdom built on lies. You jam the tip of a dagger into the crack between the planks. You pry. But as the last vibration fades into the damp air, a new fear, colder and sharper than the old one, takes its place. The cost of this secret. Days later, you return. You crave the hum, the peace, but the cellar is silent, a different kind of silence. The bowls are overturned, scattered on the dirt floor like dead things. The old monk lies in the center of the room, his hands crossed on his chest, his eyes staring at the stone ceiling. The official cause of death will be ruled a divine punishment, a righteous smiting for his blasphemy. Divine intervention was the cover story for a conspiracy hatched within your own family. They think they have won. They see a prince, pale and trembling, hearing voices, ready to renounce his birthright for a quiet life of prayer and penance in a secluded monastery. They are waiting for you to break, but they have made a terrible miscalculation. They have forgotten the books your grandfather, the Scholar King, collected from lands the church deemed heretical. A sigil from a world before the Romans, before the church. A mark used by the most obscure and persecuted sects of the Memory Keepers, the oral historians and mystics the new religion tried so hard to erase. 99% of scholars wouldn't recognize it. It was knowledge so forbidden, it was almost lost to history. Almost. It is a symbol for renewal, for rebirth. Suddenly, the cold in the crypt feels different. It is the cold of a revelation. This tomb was never a memorial. It was a message. It sits beside a blank space on the table. Or, the Archbishop continues, his voice losing none of its terrifying calm. You may choose this one. You may refuse. You may fight. You can claim your birthright. Rally the few lords loyal to your cause. You can turn this kingdom into a charnel house for your own ambition. He pauses, letting you imagine it. The banners, the blood, the righteousness. And then he pulls out the scroll. The only sound is the frantic, wet hammering of your own heart against your ribs. The Archbishop's smile tightens, a barely perceptible crack in his holy facade. To refuse is to admit doubt. To agree is to walk into your trap. The weight of 1,000 pairs of eyes pins him to the altar. He nods, a slow, regal dip of his mitred head. He brings it to you. The scent of incense is overwhelming, a perfumed lie. You lift the bone from its cushion. It feels wrong. Too light, too porous, The twin tails signify a breakthrough. A new poultice using river moss and yarrow has been found to stop the putrefaction of a battlefield wound. A secret that will save hundreds of guild brothers. Knowledge the church-sanctioned physicians would burn you for possessing. For centuries, historians will call these Mason's marks, simple, egotistical signatures of the men who built God's house. What 99% of people will never know is that these men weren't signing their work. They were building a fortress of information, a scripture of the oppressed written right over the top of the church's own. The church buried this secret for 800 years, and it begins with a sound, a hollow sound where there should be solid earth. You are on your knees in the royal monastery's new tithe barn, a cathedral of stolen harvests. The moonlight slanting through the high slats illuminates a universe of floating dust motes. The air is cold, sharp with the scent of dry straw and the ammonia tang of rodent droppings. But beneath it, another smell. A scent that doesn't belong here. Damp, ancient earth, like a freshly opened grave. Church has built an empire on the idea that all healing, all peace, must flow through them. A divine prescription only they can write. This secret knowledge that a man can be healed with simple resonance and focused intent is the historical equivalent of a multi-billion-dollar industry seeing its most profitable drug rendered obsolete by a simple, free herb. It cannot be allowed to exist. You are healing. Yes, the paranoia is receding, replaced by a clarity you haven't felt since you were a boy. You remember the new physician, the one so loyal to the church, pressing a daily herbal tonic into your hands to balance your humors. His smile never reached his eyes. The historical records will never mention this. They won't show the chemical analysis of the single hair follicle trapped in the binding of this very journal centuries from now that reveals trace amounts of ergot and belladonna, a hallucinogenic fungus that causes paranoia and a potent poison that confuses the senses. It wasn't a holy sickness. It was a deliberate, slow-drip poisoning. The image of the sarcophagus lid warps and shifts, its flat surface resolving into a landscape of hills and valleys, of chisel marks and the slow erosion of centuries. And then, something else, fainter than a scratch, shallower than a breath on glass. Beneath the deep, proud grooves of the pious Latin, a second text appears. This is the secret the stone has kept, a symbol that has no place here. It's not a cross. It's not a Christian sigil. It is older, a fluid design that feels almost alive. He lets the words hang in the dead air. Ilara will be released. A carriage will take her to the coast with enough gold to disappear forever. Your little guild, the weavers, the masons, they will be left alone. Their network, without your patronage, will simply wither into the obscurity it deserves. You will live out your days at the Abbey of St. Giles. It is comfortable. The library is extensive. You will be safe. The word hangs there. Safe. A gilded cage. Then he pushes a second quill forward. This one is plain, functional, a crow's feather. 99% of people believe what they are told, especially when the telling is done in a place like this. But you have the words, the forbidden words from a text they thought was ash. Your voice, when you speak, cuts through the chanting like glass. Your eminence, you say, the words practiced, precise. The lost canticles of Gethric warn that a holy relic, if touched by the impure, can be corrupted. I ask to inspect it, to ensure its sanctity for the good of the kingdom. Silence, not a cough, not a shuffle of feet. A book of rebellion written in a language that has no sound. Your fingers, raw from the cold, trace the lines of a carving on a capital stone. It's a lion, noble and fierce, but with one detail a common eye would dismiss as artistic flourish. It has two tails. You feel the gritty texture of the sandstone, the fine dust coming away on your skin, the immense, chilling weight of the secret it holds. This isn't art, it's a message, and you must decide whose name is written on it. Theirs or yours? Archaeologists will see the scratches on their surfaces and assume it's wear and tear. They won't know the truth you are living right now. Those scratches, when analyzed by a future science you cannot imagine, perfectly match the acoustic frequencies known to calm the human nervous system, to induce meditative states. This isn't heresy. It is a sophisticated understanding of the mind-body connection that is centuries ahead of its time. The monk is not summoning a demon. He is awakening a part of you that has fallen asleep. But this threatens everything. When a powerful institution wants to discredit a whistleblower or a political opponent, they don't always need to invent lies. They just leak a manipulated psychological profile. They whisper about instability. They weaponize your own mind against you, gaslighting you until the world, and even you, begins to believe you are broken. You weren't going mad. You were being neutralized. And as you write, a memory surfaces, sharp and clear through the fog. The wine your brother poured for you 3 nights ago, insisting you drink to his health. It had a strange, cloying sweetness beneath the bitter tannins. You beg the spirit of the saintly prince for a miracle, for intercession. You leave, your heart full of desperate hope. You never knew he wasn't there. You never knew he had already performed his own miracle. Now it is today. A technician squints at a laptop, her breath pluming in the cold. Reflective transformation imaging. It's a new science that acts like old magic, using dozens of angled light sources to capture the topology of a surface in impossible detail, revealing textures and marks invisible to the human eye. She cycles through the light profiles on the screen. "A simple choice, my son," he says, his voice a low, reasonable hum that makes your skin crawl. "A fork in God's great and mysterious road." He gestures to a quill resting in a pool of black ink. It is long, elegant, carved from the feather of a swan. "With this," he explains, "you will sign the decree of abdication. A holy sickness, a divine calling to a life of prayer has taken hold of your spirit. The people will weep, but they will understand. A pious prince is a blessing, even in retirement." It's all that's left of your sister, a ghost pushing you forward. The archbishop, his face a mask of pious ecstasy, lifts the reliquary. Inside, cushioned on crimson velvet, lies the femur of Saint Hilaire. Slick with the holy oil it supposedly weeps. The collective gasp of the crowd is a physical force, a vacuum sucking the air from your lungs. For a century, pilgrims have crawled on bloody knees to be anointed by this miracle, trading their last coins for a single, greasy drop. You know the truth. The greatest secrets aren't whispered in shadows. They are carved in stone for the entire world to see and to ignore. You stand in the skeletal nave of a half-built cathedral, the air thick with the ghosts of chanted prayers and the sharp, clean scent of cut limestone. Your torch spits and hisses, throwing a frantic dance of light and shadow across the colossal pillars that rise like the ribs of a leviathan. To the spies of the crown, the agents of the church, This is a holy construction site. To you, it is a library of whispers. You stare at the flickering flame of the candle, and in its reflection, you see the faces of the starving villagers. The weight of this knowledge is a physical thing, heavier than your armor, colder than the stone floor. To reveal this truth would not just be treason, it would be blasphemy. It would not just cost you the throne, it would cost you your soul in a world that believes the church speaks for God. The parchment in your hands is no longer just a record, it is a death sentence. And 99% of people, including every priest and bishop in the kingdom, would tell you this is the sound of a demon being invited into your body. You can feel the knots of fear in your mind, tight and tangled from months of looking over your shoulder. Begin to loosen. The ASMR quality hum seems to physically massage the terror from your thoughts. The metallic taste of constant anxiety begins to fade from your tongue. For centuries, these bowls will be discovered in monastic ruins and misidentified as simple charity plates. The scratching of the nib on the rough parchment is the only sound you trust anymore. It's the sound of your own mind, fighting to stay on the page. You write about the fog, the thick, confusing haze that descends upon your thoughts in the middle of a council meeting, leaving you stammering and lost. You describe waking in the night, convinced the gargoyles outside your window are weeping your name. This is the same tactic we see today. A ghost of statecraft haunting the modern world. They had neutralized the threat, locking him away first in a monastery, then in a hallowed grave. They believed their power was absolute. Their arrogance was their blindness. Imagine you are one of them, a pilgrim from the 15th century. Your child is sick with the sweating sickness, and you have walked 100 miles to be here. You press your forehead against the cool, unforgiving marble. Your fingers trace the Latin inscriptions promising eternal rest. You can almost hear the monks chanting, feel the holiness seeping from the stone. Across a heavy oak table, two men watch you. One is your father, the king, his face a mask of regal fatigue. The other is the archbishop, his eyes as placid and deep as a frozen lake. They are the twin heads of the conspiracy that has cornered you, the inseparable powers of God and gold, and they have never looked more alike. There are no swords here, no guards at the door. That is a peasant's idea of power. This is something older, colder. The archbishop slides a piece of parchment across the table. His fingernails are immaculately clean. The deepest poison isn't a lie they force down your throat. It's the one you beg to drink yourself. You stand in the cathedral of the mourning saint, and the air is thick enough to swallow. A slurry of sweat, beeswax, and the cloying sweetness of incense. 1,000 souls press in around you, their upturned faces pale and wrapped in the flickering candlelight. They are a single breathing creature of faith, and you have brought a knife to sever its heart. Your grief is a cold, hard stone in your gut. It is built entirely on trust, and as you stand in the shadows, you notice one of them, a man whose eyes are not on the prince's charcoal drawings, nor on the farmer's map. His gaze is fixed on the prince himself, and his expression is not one of hope. It is one of cold, hungry calculation. He listens to every word about self-sufficiency, every secret shared, and in his mind, he is not measuring its value in bushels of grain or saved lives. He is measuring its value in silver, the price of betrayal. It's the same monstrous blueprint for control that echoes into the modern world, where an engineered crisis in the housing market or a manipulated spike in energy prices can transfer staggering amounts of wealth from the many to the few. They manufacture the emergency, then sell you the cure at a price that costs you your freedom. The scrolls before you are not just an accounting of grain. They are proof of a crime so vast, so evil, it has no name. It is a conspiracy against the entire kingdom, perpetrated by the very shepherds meant to protect the flock. He dips a small, leather-wrapped mallet into a cup of water, the soft splash echoing in the profound silence. Then he strikes the first bowl. It is not a bell's chime. It is a hum, a low, resonant frequency that you feel not with your ears, but in your bones. It travels through the stone, up your spine, and vibrates deep inside your skull. The sound is a living thing, a low, golden serpent uncoiling in the darkness. He strikes another bowl, then another, weaving a symphony of vibrations. This is the Symphonia Anime, the soul's harmony. They believe the official story that will be written, that a divine madness drove you to renounce your claim to the throne. A spiritual crisis. They will never know it was a coup, executed not with an army, but with a quiet, creeping poison meant to unmake your mind. Your hand shakes as you reach for the small leather-bound journal you keep hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The scrape of stone on stone is a secret sound in the dead of night. You uncork the ink, dip the quill. The low, electric hum of the imaging equipment is the only sound, a strange counterpoint to the absolute silence of the dead. Dust motes, ancient and undisturbed, dance in the angled beams of the work lights, like the ghosts of a million whispered prayers. This is the tomb of Prince Valerius, the pious prince who surrendered his crown for a life of prayer, dying peacefully in a monastery a year later. They built this grand sarcophagus to house his holy relics, a testament to his sacrifice. His enemies, the ones who had forced his abdication, breathed a sigh of relief. The greatest lie ever told is that kings have a choice. The truth, the one buried in the stone beneath their castles, is far more terrifying. They only have consequences. The air in this room is dead. It was dug for storing wine, not secrets, a forgotten pocket of earth deep beneath the kitchens. There are no windows, no tapestries, just damp, weeping stone and a single thick candle that doesn't flicker because there is no breeze to move it. The silence is a physical weight, pressing on your eardrums, meant to suffocate any scream. The battle lines are drawn, not around the castle walls, but through the very heart of your own family. You are no longer fighting for your father. You are fighting him. The prince isn't just trying to survive a conspiracy. He is becoming the architect of a new world, built from the bottom up. He looks around at the faces in the gloom. The weaver, the smith, the herbalist, the farmer. Hope, for the first time in months, feels real. It tastes like the dust in the air, earthy and solid. He sees a community built not on blood or edict, but on mutual respect and a shared, desperate dream. But this revolutionary guild has a fatal flaw, the same flaw that has undone so many dreams throughout history. You suddenly see the pattern, the cold reptilian logic of it all. The mysterious construction boom just before the famine. New archaeological evidence from our time confirms it wasn't for chapels. It was for tithe barns and expanded monastic cellars. They were building the vaults before they stole the treasure. The nobility and the church, working in a silent, unholy alliance, were hoarding the kingdom's lifeblood. They created this scarcity to break the will of an increasingly restless peasantry, to force them into crushing debt, to make them surrender their ancestral lands for a sack of flour. A single candle flame throws your shadow, a monstrous trembling giant, against the weeping walls. You are a prince, but down here, you are just a man drowning in his own thoughts. The whispers of paranoia, a constant venomous chorus in your ears. The old monk says nothing. His face is a roadmap of secrets, his eyes holding a quiet rebellion that has cost him everything. He arranges the 7 bronze bowls around you. They are not for offerings, not for food. They are instruments, your name, his name, spun from the deepest pockets of shadow in your cavernous bedchamber. You squeeze your eyes shut, but the sound is inside your head now. This is the holy sickness, as your father's court physician calls it. A trial sent by God, he says, his face a mask of pious concern. A test of your spiritual fortitude. He prescribes prayer. He prescribes fasting. He never looks you directly in the eye. 99% of people don't know that the most effective medieval weapon wasn't a trebuchet or a blade, but psychology. For 800 years, the most powerful dynasty in Europe guarded a lie carved in stone. The official story is a beautiful one, consecrated by popes and protected by kings. But what 99% of people will never know is that for all those centuries, the faithful have been kneeling before an empty box. You are in the royal crypt now. The air is so cold it feels wet. A chill that has nothing to do with the weather and everything to do with the weight of time. It smells of damp earth and extinguished candles. The world you were fighting for is gone. The war is over. They didn't just poison your body or break your armies. They have found a way to poison the very memory of sunlight. They have taken the one pure thing in your life and twisted it into a leash. They have her, and now they have you. He clutched this ring to tell you, to make sure you knew. This execution was a message. For you, a warning. Back down. You close your own hand around the signet ring, the gold still holding the faint warmth of your father's skin and the deathly chill of the man he just had murdered. The weight of it is no longer the weight of legacy. It is the weight of a declaration of war. You came into this room a prince, desperate to save your kingdom. You will leave it as something else, something harder. They are building a parallel economy, one based on fair exchange and shared progress. A world where a farmer's genius is worth as much as a lord's lineage. What you are witnessing is something that threatens the powerful more than any army. It's the decentralization of control. It's the same principle that terrifies the great banks and tech giants of the modern world. When they see the rise of cryptocurrency or open source movements, it is the radical idea that people, when connected, can create their own systems of value and trust, rendering the old gatekeepers obsolete. And then you see it. Your breath catches in your throat. The numbers don't lie. There was no shortage. The harvest of 1140 was strong. The yield of 1141 was a bounty. The grain existed. It still exists, sitting in stone-walled security, while the people who grew it eat boiled leather and grass. 99% of people, then and now, believe that famines are acts of nature, a failure of the land. This is the secret they will kill to protect. Famine is a tool. It is an act of war waged not with swords, but with granary keys. What they don't want you to know about saving your own mind is that sometimes the most powerful medicine has no taste, no smell. It is a sound. And in your world, that sound is heresy. The stone floor is a bed of ice against your back, seeping cold through your fine wool tunic, a cold that feels like the grave itself. Down here, in the forgotten cellar of a forgotten monastery, the air is thick with the ghosts of spilled wine and the damp breath of the earth. The royal linen, meant for comfort, feels coarse and suffocating, clinging to your skin, which is slick with a cold sweat that has nothing to do with the night's chill. In the flickering dance of a single candle, the familiar tapestries on the stone walls seem to writhe. The woven beasts in the royal hunt, the stag, the hounds, the hunters, their threaded eyes seem to follow you, their silent chase no longer frozen in time. The whispers start again. They are insidious, like the rustle of mice in the thatch, just on the edge of hearing. The charts point to a specific cove on a coastline hundreds of miles away, on a date determined not by a king's decree, but by the pull of the moon. He hasn't surrendered his ambition. He has merely hidden it in plain sight. And the hunt has just begun. There, on the stark white of your pillow, is a single sprig of rosemary. It is impossibly green against the linen. A tiny clump of dark, wet mud still clings to its roots, a smudge of the real world in this sterile prison. The faint, clean scent of it cuts through the stale air of the chamber. It is the scent of her hair, of her hands, of the only peace you have ever known. There is no note. There is no messenger. There is no threat whispered in the dark. None is needed. Your father, the pious king, the shepherd of his people, is a lie. The man who taught you justice and honor sanctions murder from a gilded chair, all to protect a brutal and profitable status quo. The world tilts on its axis. The stone floor beneath your knees feels like thin ice, ready to give way to a black, freezing abyss. You are not the hero in this story, fighting to save your father's legacy from a hidden evil. You have just discovered that the evil you have been hunting wears your father's face. This is the prince's great secret gamble, the forbidden guild of the free peasant. It has no name, no charter, no official existence. It is a whisper, a network. It is a counter-society born from the realization that the true power of the realm doesn't lie in castles or courts, but in the practical, life-sustaining knowledge of its people. These aren't revolutionaries plotting treason with daggers. They are innovators, sharing secrets with trowels, herbs, and seeds. The only light is a single sputtering candle that makes the shadows on the wall writhe like living things. Spread before you on a rough-hewn table are the shipping manifests, the silo inventories, the port authority ledgers from the last 3 years. The keeper who brought them is long gone, a ghost who faded back into the city's alleys. You are alone with the truth. Your fingers, stained with ink, trace the columns of numbers. The ASMR-like scrape of your fingernail against the brittle, dry parchment is the only sound. A tiny scratching against a universe of silence. You return to the book on poisons and open it to the passage you've been studying. There, in the margin, pressed into the ancient dust on the page, is a single deliberate fingerprint. It is not yours. Someone knows you are here, and they know exactly what you are looking for. The cold of the stone floor is nothing compared to the ice that now floods your veins. You are not alone in the dark. The official record says the prince went mad. What they don't want you to know is that madness can be manufactured, poured drop by drop into a silver cup. You wake with a gasp, the taste of rust flooding your mouth. It's a phantom taste, metallic and foul, like you've spent the night chewing on a cold, forgotten sword. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs, a trapped bird beating its wings against bone. Constellations you don't recognize, mapped with unnerving precision. Beside them are complex tide tables, calculations of waxing and waning moons, and coastal drawings that look nothing like the shores of this kingdom. It's a language of escape, written in the code of the sea and the stars. He isn't planning on praying for his soul. He's planning on sailing for his life. The entire spectacle in the hall was the ultimate act of misdirection, a grand illusion to buy him one thing: time. And they found her. The memory of the aviary dissolves, leaving you in the cold, oppressive present. The candle gutters, casting dancing, monstrous shadows. The silence in the room is different now. It is not empty. It is listening. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue. Your own heartbeat becomes a frantic drumming in your ears. A trapped bird throwing itself against the cage of your ribs. You stand, your body moving without your permission, and turn towards the bed. Your eyes catch it in the flickering light. It was a tool he was using to control the population, to break the guilds, to consolidate power. He wasn't a victim of the system. He was its willing, ruthless manager. This is the timeless secret of power they never write in the history books. The dark truth that echoes from your 12th century castle to the glass towers and political chambers of a future you can't imagine. Institutions build a public face of benevolence, of order and divine right, while in the back rooms they trade in blood and bone to maintain their dominance. He speaks of planting clover to return life to the soil, of rotating crops in a sequence that defies the church's sanctified planting calendar. The priests say you must plant on this saint's day and harvest on that one. Owen's calendar follows the logic of the soil, not the sky. His methods produce 30% more grain. It's enough to keep a village from starving through a hard winter. It is also enough to make the tithe barn less full, to make the bishop's coffers a little lighter. And that is the most dangerous crime of all. His voice boomed across the cathedral, promising that piety and prayer, and of course, the timely payment of tithes, were the only path to deliverance. You watched as people who hadn't eaten in days dropped their last thin coins into the collection plate. But the memory keepers, the secret network of scribes and librarians you cultivate, sing a different song. They sing in whispers, in coded messages tucked into merchant caravans, in scrolls delivered in the dead of night. Tonight, you are not a prince. You are a conspirator, locked in a damp cellar far from the castle. Night after night, you return, your body slowly fighting off the poison with the help of the garden herbs you now gather under the guise of quiet contemplation. You copy the diagrams, you memorize the formulas. But one night, you notice something is wrong. A book you had left open to a specific page on nerve toxins is now closed. The fine layer of dust on the nearby lectern bears a faint smudge, not your own. You dismiss it as a trick of the light, of your own fevered mind. Until the next night. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin. and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. For the powerful, it was often a gilded prison, a place to send a political rival, to be forgotten by the world, to slowly fade into pious obscurity. That's what they believe they are doing to him. They are sending him to pray, to repent, to become a footnote. They believe they have won. But the journal doesn't say which monastery. It doesn't say for how long. The final pages are where the true plan ignites. The neat, scholarly script gives way to something else entirely. They are filled with strange, intricate astronomical charts. What they don't want you to know is that the most effective weapon is never steel, it is love. The intelligence operation against you was never about your battle plans. It's a tactic as old as empires, perfected in the shadowed courts of kings and the data-drenched halls of modern espionage. Your enemies weren't watching you. They were watching who you were watching. They studied your gaze, tracked your secret paths, and listened not to your proclamations, but to your silences. They didn't need to break down your castle walls. They just needed to find the key to your soul. This wasn't a message from some shadowy conspiracy in the court. The conspiracy is the court. The rot isn't in the roots of the kingdom. It is on the throne itself. Suddenly, everything becomes brutally, sickeningly clear. The hoarded grain in the hidden silos, the burned ledgers from the northern ports, the brilliant librarian, the keeper of secrets, who slipped from the observatory tower just last month. It wasn't a series of unfortunate events. It was a strategy, a brutal culling. The famine wasn't a tragedy your father was trying to solve. He speaks of how to brew a tea that can break a fever in a single night, a remedy that works when a priest's prayers and a doctor's leeches only hasten the end. 99% of the people in this land believe sickness is a punishment from God. What they don't want you to know is that the earth itself holds the cures, and people like Elspeth, often condemned as witches, are the true librarians of this life-saving wisdom. A farmer named Owen unrolls a stained parchment. It's not a map of the kingdom, but of a single field. It radiates from the silence, from the hollow-eyed stares of the few who are still strong enough to stand in the doorways of their hovels. A child, her belly swollen not with food, but with hunger's cruel bloat, watches your warhorse with eyes that hold no childhood. She doesn't see a prince. She sees a meal she can never have. Last week, the royal priest declared the Great Famine of 1142 a divine punishment, a scourge sent by God to purify the sinful peasantry. You realize, with a cold, terrifying clarity, that this is the same darkness that allows a corporation to bury a study proving its product causes cancer, the same shadow a government uses to classify a document that exposes its own crimes. The mechanisms of power haven't changed, only the costumes. You are not just trying to save your life. You are rediscovering a world of truth that was systematically erased to keep men like your uncle, your king, your priests in power. This is your first true act of rebellion, not with a sword, but with a secret. And when it was broken, it revealed not a holy text, but an intelligence dossier, a record of engineered famines, of suppressed medicine, of a secret network of thinkers and healers the church called heretics and burned from the pages of history. This is the real story of Prince Valerius. The pious prince was a fiction. The secret agent was the truth. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, Hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. His journal, which he has entrusted to you, reveals his thinking. By accepting their story, he writes, I make it real to them. Their victory becomes a wall they build around themselves, a wall that blinds them. They will feel safe. They will stop watching. His public submission wasn't an end. It was the beginning of an infiltration. This is the historical fact that shatters the foundation of so many royal dramas. A monastery wasn't always a house of God. The sound of her laugh echoing in the domed aviary, the whisper of her fingers tracing the veins on a comfrey leaf. Those secret hours were the only honest moments in your life, the only time you weren't a prince, but just a man in love with a woman who knew how to heal things and who, for a little while, made you believe you weren't broken beyond repair. But there are no secrets in a state built on fear. Heavy, oiled gold doesn't catch the light, it swallows it. You know what it is before you even touch it. The cold, familiar weight of it in your hand is a death sentence. The royal signet, not just any signet, it is the signet. The lion of your house, roaring silently from its golden prison. Its eye a single blood-red ruby. You saw this ring this morning, on your father's hand, as he raised a goblet and spoke of God's mysterious ways. The metallic taste of fear, coppery and vile, floods your mouth. It's the taste of absolute betrayal. He's tapping a limestone block, the sound sharp and clear in the echoing silence. He's showing the prince how a flying buttress truly works. A secret of weight and balance, passed down from his father. A technique far more elegant than the one the king's architect is using. It's a trick that saves stone, time, and lives. It is a form of forbidden knowledge. Across the nave, a small circle of figures huddles in the dark. An old woman, Elspeth, her face a web of wrinkles, holds up a bundle of yarrow and feverfew. The greatest lie ever told wasn't about demons or saints. It was about the lack of bread. You ride through what was once the village of Oakhaven, but the name feels like a cruel joke now. There are no oaks, only skeletal trees stripped of their bark for food. The air is wrong. It's thick and sweet with the smell of human decay, a scent that clings to the inside of your mouth and coats your tongue. You pull your cloak tighter, but the cold isn't coming from the wind. And next to it, a detailed, step-by-step description of its antidote, a concoction of milk thistle, charcoal, and a common root called burdock. It's a remedy that modern science would confirm is a powerful liver-cleansing agent. They knew. For generations, they knew how to cure things they publicly claimed were divine judgment. This hidden library is the proof. A truth so explosive, it had to be chained down and buried in the dark. It's a beautiful lie. A piece of propaganda as sophisticated as any redacted file today, designed by the powerful to make their control seem inevitable, divinely ordained. They needed a saint to hide a revolutionary, and it worked. Until a demolition crew renovating the very chapel built to honor the lie heard a hollow sound. A false bottom in the prince's stone sarcophagus. Inside, there was no body, only a small, leather-bound journal. Its pages were filled not with prayers, but with a cipher. It's a truth hidden in plain sight, a psychological maneuver so audacious that no one thinks to look for it. It's the same way you might feel in your own life, when letting an opponent think they've won is the only way to get close enough to uncover their weakness. It's not defeat, it's patience. It's a strategy as old as mankind. Later, in the shivering quiet of your hidden room, you unroll the prince's final letter to you, his true last will and testament. It's not a confession, it's a blueprint. She would hold up a leaf to the light, explaining its properties not as a scholar reads from a book, but as someone listening to a secret the plant itself was telling her. Her knowledge wasn't inherited, it was earned, plucked from the ground, understood through touch and scent and trial. 99% of people in your world believe wisdom is passed down through bloodlines. Ilara was living proof that the most vital knowledge grows up from the soil. She was the free, breathing world you were fighting for, condensed into one person. The memory is so sharp, it's painful. The room is so quiet, you can hear the blood pounding in your ears, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. With your own fingers, you begin to pry his open. The stiffness of rigor mortis has set in, and you have to use force. There is a sound, a series of dry, popping crackles, like damp wood thrown on a fire. It is the sound of a dead man's knuckles breaking. It is the sound of your entire world splintering. Something falls from his palm and clatters against the stone floor. It doesn't glint. The air is thick with the scent of wet mortar, green oak, and cold, damp earth. You pull your rough-spun cloak tighter, the wool scratching against your neck. You shouldn't be here. No one should. The prince is here, but he is not the prince tonight. His fine clothes are gone, replaced by the simple tunic of a stonemason's apprentice. He isn't holding a scepter. He's holding a piece of charcoal, kneeling on the dusty floor beside a man whose hands are a roadmap of calluses and scars. This is Thomas the Mason, someone in your father's court, someone close. The danger isn't in a forest clearing miles away. It's here, in the castle, maybe in the very next room. And they don't just know about the network, they are controlling it. Complex herbal taxonomies passed down from pagan traditions, knowledge branded as witchcraft, punishable by fire. As you unchain a heavy tome, the clink of metal against wood echoes like a dropped coin in a cathedral. Your fingers, stained with ink and trembling with a mixture of fear and adrenaline, trace the diagrams. Yarrow to clot blood, willow bark for pain. And then your breath catches in your throat. A chapter on subtle poisons, the kind that mimics slow disease. Your poison. This isn't a holy sickness. This is a man who knows a truth so fundamental, so shattering, it could bring the kingdom, the church, and the entire structure of their power crashing down. When you refuse the crown, it isn't a whisper of abdication. It is a scream of rebellion. For centuries, the official history, carved in stone, illuminated in scripture, told a different story. A story of a prince so devout, he chose heaven over earth. The rebel prince, tamed by the church, his claim to the throne renounced, his movement shattered. Your comrades look hollowed out, their hope draining onto the cold stone floor. The official history is being written right there in front of you. But 99% of the people in this hall, including the smug-faced cardinal and the king's chamberlain, are missing the secret that is screaming from the prince's very posture. They don't know that surrender can be the sharpest weapon of all. It flees to an abandoned aviary on the edge of the city, where the cages have long since rusted open and bindweed climbs the walls like a green tide. It flees to Ilara. You don't think of her as a peasant or an herbalist or a member of a guild. Those are the words of your world, the world of cages. To you, she is the scent of rosemary and damp earth. You see her hands, not delicate and pale, but strong. The knuckles calloused, the fingernails permanently stained with chlorophyll and dirt. The rope burn on his neck is too clean, too perfect. A stage prop. 99% of people would see the rope, the overturned stool, and believe the story they are fed. But you have learned to look closer. You have learned that the deadliest secrets hide in plain sight. His right hand is clenched into a fist, a white-knuckled knot of defiance that death itself could not uncoil. The guards missed it, or they were ordered to. You kneel. The rough wool of the man's tunic scrapes against your knuckles. The greatest heresies are not spoken in Latin, but whispered in the common tongue over a shared piece of bread. The secret that could burn a kingdom to the ground isn't a plot to kill the king. It's a plan to make him irrelevant. You are inside the hollowed-out skeleton of a new cathedral. Moonlight spills through the empty spaces where stained glass will one day tell holy stories. But tonight, the moonlight tells a different tale. It illuminates the raw, unfinished stone, the giant wooden scaffolds that climb like ladders to a God who isn't listening. Someone, somewhere, was feeding the memory keeper's lies. Carefully crafted disinformation, false histories, flawed scientific theories, poisonous philosophies was being introduced into the network, memorized with the same sacred devotion as the truth. These living books were being filled with corrupted text. The resistance was being turned into an instrument of propaganda. And the final entry, scrawled with a hand trembling so badly, the words are nearly illegible, gives you the metallic taste of pure fear. The source of the poison, he discovered, wasn't some distant enemy bishop or rival order. It was coming from inside your own home. This is a graveyard of knowledge. What the church doesn't want you to know is that they didn't just burn heretics, they buried worlds. You see titles in Greek, in Arabic, diagrams of Roman aqueducts and siege engines, treatises on the movement of stars that defy God's perfect heavens. And then you find it, a section on medicine, hidden behind a wall of grim-looking demonologies. These are not the ramblings of monks who believe sickness is a punishment from God. This is science, detailed anatomical drawings from the great physician Al-Zahrawi. The air in the scriptorium is thick and cloying, a mixture of melting beeswax and the sweet, dusty decay of 1,000 years of ink on parchment. This is not a grand hall of power. This is a cold stone room where secrets are put to the sword. You are not a prince draped in royal silks. You are Valerius, and you stand before your father, the king, in the rough-spun tunic of a scholar. His eyes, once full of pride, are now filled with a cold, slithering terror. Because he sees the truth in your gaze, this isn't piety. They discredit the whistleblower, frame the protest as chaos, and suppress the inconvenient truth that threatens their power. The story of Valerius is the secret they fear the most. That one person, armed with the truth and the courage to act, can plant the seeds of a revolution that can outlive empires. They lied about the past. What else are they lying about now? He plays his part to perfection. His voice, when it comes, a feigned tremor of piety and sorrow. He speaks of his devotion to God, of his sinful pride, of his desire for a life of quiet contemplation. The words are honeyed poison, and they feel like ash in your mouth. You watch his hand move, the dry, papery scrape of the quill against parchment, the only sound in a hall that once echoed with his calls to war. To the world, this is a victory. The stone floor is cold through the thin soles of your boots, a constant reminder of how far you have fallen. Your enemies have won. They outmaneuvered your armies, poisoned your allies, and turned your counsel against you. You sit in the suffocating silence, the candlelight painting your shadow on the wall, a hunched and broken thing. You replay every mistake, every failed strategy, every word of advice you ignored. But your mind refuses to stay in the war rooms and the throne rooms. It flees. It flees to the one place that was never about the crown. Master Aemon, the guild leader, a man with a spine of iron and a heart for his people, found hanging from a ceiling beam. The official story is already spreading through the castle corridors like a disease. A man broken by the famine, by his failure to provide. You smell the cloying perfume of their narrative, but underneath it, you smell the truth, the sharp, metallic tang of fear, the wet scrape of a guard's boot outside the door, not keeping watch, but keeping you in. You stand over the body, now laid on the floor. You are no longer the hunter discovering a secret. You are the secret, discovered, and the only way out is back up the stairs, into the arms of the man who has come to bury you with it. You hadn't just stumbled upon a single crime, you had uncovered a cell in a vast intellectual resistance. But then, as you turn a page, the brittle crackle of the parchment sounds like a bone snapping. The ink changes. The confident loops and swirls of the monk's hand become jagged, panicked slashes. Your heart begins to pound in a new, frantic rhythm. The revelation you just cherished curdles into something awful. He learned a terrible truth just before he died. The network wasn't just being hunted, it was being used. The web of trust had been poisoned. The air that hits you is different. It's not the familiar scent of beeswax and vellum. This air is ancient, dry, and heavy with secrets. It smells of dust that hasn't been disturbed in centuries, and the faint, papery decay of forbidden thoughts. Moonlight slices through a high, grimy window, illuminating not shelves of holy scripture, but something far more dangerous. Books, chained to their lecterns like prisoners. The moonlight catches on the iron, glinting like a row of metallic teeth. You run your fingers over a binding, the leather so brittle it threatens to crumble. This isn't just heresy. 99% of people believe the story of the saintly prince, the one who gave up a crown for God. But the truth, buried in an empty tomb for 800 years, is that the saint was a rebel, and his holy story is a lie designed to hide a war you were never meant to know about. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages.